Hello, my name is Kevin Day. This video presentation is on the current state of ransomware and threat vectors. This video presentation was part of my Cyber Operations Master's degree at Metropolitan State University in St. Paul, Minnesota. This video content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. Ransomware is a classification of malware that infects a device and then either encrypts or otherwise prevents a device from being used until a ransom is paid to the attacker. The defining feature and major difference from other malware is that a ransom is demanded by the attacker for the removal of the malware. There are many ways that ransomware can prevent the use of the infected device, with the most common being the encryption of data on the device. In the early ransomware attacks were relatively low-key and unsophisticated, where in present day there is an increase in sophistication, complexity, and multi-prong. This could even include prolonged distributed denial of service attacks until the ransom is paid. This branches out from encrypting files and demanding payment for decryption. Ransomware can encrypt files prior to encryption. Files can be released to increase pressure on an individual and/or organization to pay the ransom. Most common ransomware types are crypto, which encrypts files and data within a system, making the content inaccessible without a decryption key. Leakware, this threatens to distribute sensitive information online to incur panic and payment. Lockers, users are completely locked out of a system, files and applications are inaccessible. A lock screen is displayed demanding a ransom, and often includes a countdown timer or clock to increase urgency and victims to act. And scareware. Alert is displayed claiming to detect a virus. A user is directed to send money to resolve the problem. This could include locking or flooding the screen with alerts. Ransomware type attacks have been around since the first identified ransomware attack in 1989 with the AIDS Trojan. Delegates who attended the World Health Organization AIDS conference in 1989 received a floppy disk infected with a Trojan ransomware that impacted MS-DOS. The program would count the number of times the computer was booted, and once it reached 90, it would hide the directories and encrypt or lock the names of the files on the C drive. To regain access, the user would have to send $189 or $378 to be mailed to a P.O. box in Panama. This was overcome by simple symmetric cryptography and tools to decrypt the files. The cost for a ransomware attack can be staggering. In 2019, the city of Baltimore was attacked by a ransomware and reported spending $18.2 million in recovery. As noted on a recent report from CNBC, the average ransomware cyber attack cost companies $200,000, and many did not recover and shut their doors. In 2021, the average ransomware paid was around $136,000, and the most common payment was $10,000. The average remediation costs associated with ransomware in 2020 was around $761,000, and in 2021 was $1.85 million. The average and median ransomware payments in Q2 of 2021 by Coverware. As we see, the chart sees a steadily increase in payment. A relatively new expansion of ransomware is the Ransomware-as-a-Service approach. This is a derivative of a software-as-a-service model. hosted anonymously by professional hackers that handle all aspects of the attack, from distributing ransomware to collecting payment and restoring access in return for a cut of the loot. Sold on a cloud-based subscription model for a subscription fee, developers can create ransomware code and sell to a third party. This makes it easy for anyone without coding or experience, contributing to the growth and frequency of attacks. Two well-known ransomware-as-a-service threat actors are DarkSide, operators focused on Windows and Linux system targeting enterprise environments running unpatched VMware EXI hypervisors or stealing vCenter credentials. In May 10, 2021, the FBI confirmed that the DarkSide ransomware was responsible for the compromise of the Colonial Pipeline networks. Colonial Pipeline had approximately 100 gigabytes of data stolen, allegedly paying almost $5 million to a DarkSide affiliate. The threat group attributed with this attack was Carbon Spider. The second, Revil, identified as the ransom behind one of the largest ransomware demands on record, $10 million. Sold by the criminal group Pinchy Spider, sells Ransomware-as-a-Service under the affiliated model and 40% of the profits. With the continued developments of new technology services, cybercriminals are looking for more lucrative targets to exploit and leverage for financial gains. Software as a service offers a simple solution for many markets due to the following advantages: less administration efforts and no maintenance cost of required equipment. A cloud-to-cloud scenario for a ransomware attack would be: an email was sent appearing from a cloud service provider. User is requested to click on a link to update an app. The user installs a malicious app or Chrome extension that requires a scope of permission to access the software as a service data. Once the permissions are granted, ransomware starts to encrypt data directly in the cloud. As a result, possible scenarios would be the blocking of on-premise antivirus and backup agents, deleting backup data, downloading of sensitive data, stealing the victim's sensitive credentials, or threaten to upload it to public view if the victim does not pay. Ransom DDoS. A malicious party attempts to extort money from an individual or organization by threatening them with a distributed denial of service attack. Threat actors may carry out a DDoS attack and then follow up with a ransom demanding payment to stop the attack, or sending the ransom note threatening a DDoS attack first. However, the attacker may not actually be capable of carrying out the attack. What is a DDoS attack? This type of attack exhausts the resources of an application, website, or network so legitimate users cannot receive service, sending a flooding of network traffic to their target. Attacks are distributed, sent from a variety of sources, often spoofed. This increased difficulty to block them than a normal denial of service attack from a single source. A DDoS ransom note is a message that's sent from a malicious party to a business demanding money, or else the malicious party will carry out a DDoS attack. Often these are sent via email, multiple messages sent revealing more details about their specific threat or demands. The threat contained in a DDoS ransom note can take a few forms. A malicious party may take credit for a previous DDoS attack or threaten another, take credit for a DDoS attack that is currently in progress, or threaten a future DDoS attack at either a certain or undefined time. Unlike ransomware variants of the past, Maze ransomware has combined ransomware and data breaches with devastating effects on targets. The Maze ransomware is a 32-bit binary, usually as an exe or DIL file, distributed by exploit kits and spam email campaigns as attachments or inline links to documents which download and execute malicious payload. This does not immediately encrypt data but lies in wait, collecting and copying data to an offsite location. Travels through networks and collects credentials to enable privilege escalation. Targets key password-safe software as well as Active Directory. When adequate and credentials have been collected, Maze encrypts files and holds them for ransom. Maze does include the following evasion techniques. It's sent using zip attachments, encrypted with a password and or document that includes a macro, and cannot automatically open the file, protected with a password. Scanning macros are a challenge, since most antivirus scans do not normally scan zip files. The methods of initial infection for Maze ransomware are: a user downloads a malicious Microsoft Word document which contains a macro that launches an ICE ID payload which ultimately used to execute instance of Beacon. Actor logs into internet-facing device via remote desktop protocol. Generic support account is used to gain access. Threat actor exploiting a misconfigured internet-facing system allowed for deployment of tools to pivot onto the internal network. An actor can log on to a web portal account using a weak password. Authentication access enabled mid-interpreter payload to be launched on an internal system. Ransomware protection and best practices. This is a mixture of identification to understand and manage the cybersecurity risk, protection, which approves safeguards to ensure delivery of critical services, detection, activities to identify the occurrence of a cybersecurity event, responding, which is taking action regarding a cybersecurity incident, and recovery, which restores capabilities that were impaired. The first step to protecting an organization against a ransomware is to identify the vectors of possible attack and the most vulnerable data. Before an organization can start the process of protecting themselves from ransomware, they must first have a complete understanding of their system, user behaviors, and an ideal of their most valuable business information. This understanding of the cyberspace will identify to the organization where they are most valuable and will greatly reduce the amount of time it takes to detect and respond to any ransomware malware attack. This can be started by identifying vectors of attack by performing a cybersecurity audit. This could be listing all network devices and all software, including the version number and platform. Identifying the most vulnerable data. This could be employee or customer records, R&D data, or financial reports. While the identification may seem unnecessary and a waste of time, it will greatly reduce the amount of time spent on the following sections. The information gathered will be used to set up protection, detection, and detecting infections with recovery from any infections. After the organization has completed the audit and has collected the information into one place, they can start the process of protecting from ransomware. It is impossible for an organization to be 100% protected from ransomware. The goal is to minimize the risk as much as possible while having a minimal impact on the organization's members and stakeholders. There are two paths that a ransomware infection can get into a system or network. The first being in user interaction, where the most common attack path is through a malicious link or attachment or email. The best protection technique is a comprehensive security training with your employees, or software exploit, where the most common attack path is through unpatched software, or internet-facing software such as an FTP, SSH, or Telnet are especially vulnerable. The best prevention technique is making sure that software is kept up to date, patching systems as soon as possible, especially important for internet-facing applications. No matter how many different layers of protection an organization has, there is always an ongoing non-zero chance of a ransomware infection. Organizations with proper detection ability regularly can keep ransomware infections from spreading off the initial device. This starts by gathering logs from as many different devices as possible, correlating using a system to interpret the logs using Splunk or Logzilla, and then analyzing using software to generate alerts on suspicious activity, actively monitoring alerts to be responsible and respond as soon as possible. After a ransomware infection is detected, it is paramount that the organization respond as soon as possible to the infection. The longer it takes to detect and respond to an infection, the worse the outcome will be. A couple of minutes can be the difference between having a single machine infected and having an entire network infected. Speed is paramount. Having an incident response plan with predefined roles and responsibility. An error on the side of caution. If unsure, assume a device is infected. Stop the spread often includes physically disconnecting devices from the network and powering off the devices as soon as possible. After a ransomware attack has been detected and contained, the organization will need to recover the affected device. While it might be tempting to pay the bounty to get all information from a device back, there is no guarantee that a key to decode the data will arrive after the payment. Nearly every security agency agrees that paying a ransomware bounty is not a good idea. However, the FBI also urged that the payment of the bounties may be illegal in some circumstances. The only time paying the bounty is acceptable if there's a life at stake. Then recovering devices, restoring from backups. If no backups are available, completely reformat the device before putting it back into a production environment. In conclusion, the development and evolution of ransomware is still rapidly progressing. New and more dangerous ransomware is being released and consistently. The total revenue generated by the malware is increasing every year. The ever-increasing revenue with a continued dependence on digital systems in a day-to-day life means that ransomware will continue to be around for years to come. While the staggering cost of the ransom or paying for the recovery, organizations will need to be prepared and ready to respond to these attacks. Using a cybersecurity framework such as NIST will provide a framework to build and respond recovery for the organization. By taking the time and energy to plan for the eventuality of a ransomware attack, organizations can likely mitigate the worst of the damage caused by the ransomware. The preparation and monitoring required to keep up with ransomware will be expensive and time-consuming, but the benefits will greatly outweigh the costs. This is the references I used for my presentation. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it.